Here we go. We are being live streamed, and I think that lets us proceed with our meeting. I'd like to call us to order and ask for y'all to join me in a moment of prayer of silence, but please, please pray for the families of those who were impacted by the terrible accident at Folly Beach just the other day. The beautiful bride who was killed in that terrible accident. In God's name we pray. Amen. Thank you. So Amy's going to kind of take it right away with our March monthly report. We're already at the end of the first quarter as far as reporting with this budget year 2024. Amy?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So let's just get right into the monthly reports. I sent everybody the reports last night. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review them or not, but just quickly for the general fund expenditures, where everybody is under target as of March 31st anyway. So you see all the green buttons, meaning we're in the green, we're good to go for now anyway.
Go back to that one more time, Amy.
Sure.
This is our expenditures. I didn't read the report yet. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. So all departments are under target in total as of March 31st. There are some departments that are slightly over target operationally. Parks is due to streetlights and the timing of payments for maintenance projects that we had going on. So that should level out. Police, the taser payment was made earlier than it typically is. So when we do targets, we take all of that into consideration. So that threw them, that skewed their target a bit. New car supplies because of a PO that rolled over from 2022. So that expense is covered, and vehicle repairs, but insurance proceeds will cover those additional expenses, but they are over on travel and training, office supplies, and community outreach right now as of March 31st. Public service, they're a little over target because we ordered garbage carts a little earlier than we anticipated. That new recollect service that we have, we paid the full thing in total when we anticipated having to pay that monthly. So that threw them over target. And then we paid in invoices for the additional contracted services we had for Hurricane Ian in 2023, but we're working on FEMA reimbursement for those. And recreation is over, but that is because they have increased participation in their programs. So that's a good thing. And with increased participation comes increased revenues to cover the cost. So that's not of concern either. Any questions on any of that?
Anybody?
And then this is what it looks like. We've changed our graphs a little bit. So you'll see these yellow mustard colors are the targets. So you can see where everybody's pretty much under target versus the actual costs. I don't know if that helps kind of look at it. And then that's in total so far for the year, or for March 31st anyway. And then for revenues, there's only 3 areas that were under target. One is licenses, but that's a timing issue for us. Last year we had that new due date, and so we're kind of trying to anticipate that with data on how to move those targets around. So we're not worried about licenses at all. It's a timing issue. Permits and fees, if you remember, we reduced that revenue a lot in 2023 because just in looking at a lot of that revenue was down. So we'll watch that. We're hoping it's just a timing issue, but for right now, permits and fees is a little bit below target. And then rents and concessions is below target, but that's just because we haven't received one rent payment. So we should be fine there as well. Any questions there?
Amy, I see you got a significant increase in interest income. That's just a function of what banks are paying, what
yeah, interest rates increased before we could adjust it when we were doing the budget last year. So we'll just be well over target for those, unless something happens the rest of the year.
And the franchise fee has a nice increase over last year. And that's just a percentage, so it's just based on how much electricity they sold last year?
Yeah, and if they had a rate increase as well, then that will increase our revenues. So
I see.
remember for a while it flatlined, so we just assumed that it would stay kind of flatlined for the rest of the time, and now we've seen an increase again, so.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Amy, what is the miscellaneous income at the bottom that's so much higher, 145%?
That's a great question, because it might be a grant.
Okay.
Sorry, Councilman Shealy, I was hoping
Sorry.
somebody could answer me. I know that I'll get a text message in a minute. I'll be able to answer the question.
Okay.
I was looking at bigger numbers, not the smaller ones. So enterprise funds, we've changed these around. If you remember last year, we we're kind of reporting enterprise funds and general fund together. So we've separated those out now because enterprise funds more mimic a business than they do like the general fund. So we've changed that to kind of a profit and loss status to see if that maybe that's a little bit more clear. So as you can see, all of these numbers, we did not take into consideration any transfers in that we have. So for some of these funds, we have transfers in from hospitality for certain projects and things like that. But these numbers are showing you just straight actual revenues and expenses. So that's why there's probably a little bit different than what you remember from the budget. It just doesn't include the transfers, if that makes sense. So that's just straight revenue and straight expenses. So when you looking at that for Angel, the ballpark and golf course, the budget anticipates a little bit of an operating loss for those funds. And then for the City Market, Old Slave Mart and parking facilities, those were the budget shows a profit for those. So just keep that in mind. So when you're looking at this, the ones that here that we were showing having a loss, let's say, their loss is actually their targeted loss is less than what we anticipated. So they're actually doing better than what we anticipated. Does that make sense at all?
It does.
Okay. So all of our enterprise funds are doing well. As you can see, parking is doing very well, and the golf course as well. So, and Angel Oak as always. So those are always our three strong areas. Any questions there?
And Amy, the 1.2 million target loss on parking facilities, is that is a seasonal function? Just normally January, February, March, we would anticipate less revenues than the rest of the year. Is that?
That's part of it, Mayor, but it's also because, like I said, the transfers in from other funds also isn't included in that number either. So some of it is seasonal as well.
But rather than a $1.2 million loss, we only had a $26,000 loss.
Yes.
So it's performing much better.
That's correct. That's right.
Good.
And then Councilmember Shealy, that's insurance proceeds in that miscellaneous. Okay, then we have, I'm sorry, did anybody have any other questions on that?
Hey, Amy, this is Peter Shade. I'm in my car.
I see you in your car.
Cool.
I can't see the screen. I mean, that would be kind of dangerous if I try to drive.
Yes, don't do that.
But just a follow-up question about the parking revenues. That's taken into consideration the closing of the temporary closing of the Whitworth garage
Yes.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And were our projections somewhat modest because we've coming out of all the COVID lost revenues on the parking garages. This is reflecting us being back up to speed, I guess, with all of our garages being open with the exception of Whitworth Street.
Well, you got to remember that Wentworth is run by the college. So,
Right.
And yes, we were still somewhat conservative in our parking revenues
Yeah.
for
Okay.
2023 as well.
I mean, I think those numbers are good from what I've been able to hear. So,
Yep. So far, so good.
So far.
thank you, ma'am.
Yep. So next we have stormwater and revenues. Revenues are under target, but that's because we did the $1 increase, but it didn't go into effect until March 1st, but that shouldn't be a problem for us. So they're just right now showing just a little under target because of that. And then they're under target for expenditures as well, as you can see. Any questions there? Okay. And then tourism funds, the dotted line there is the 2022 actuals, just to kind of give you a point of reference. So we are a little bit higher in March anyway, above our 2022 actuals. These were our approved total budgets and our March targets. We never have a target for state aid tax because we never receive those funds until April because they're paid on a quarterly basis. So we don't have any data on state aid tax right now. And then municipal aid tax always runs 2 months behind. So that's why we don't have a whole lot of data for either one of those. But as you can see, we're above our targets in tourism. Hospitality is doing well so far. So good for tourism funds as well. Any questions on that? Okay. And then, so looking at our 2024 budget calendar, because we're getting really close to starting all of that fun again soon. So I just wanted to kind of give you the key dates for our 24 budget. So all of the departmental budgets are due to us by July 7th. September, we plan for all the departments to present their budgets to you all. October 24th, we'll have a full council workshop, budget workshop, and another full council workshop on November 14th, where we hope to have the draft budget for you at that time. The newspaper advertisement goes into the paper on November 19th, and we have to have the draft budget to you on November 21st. First reading is December 5th, and second and third readings are December 19th. So those are the real key dates for the budget. Any questions? All right, and then I just added the accommodations tax grant calendar as well. Pre-application workshop will be the week of June 20th. July 20th, that grant applications will be due by 3, and then the internal committee will review the applications August through October. And then the week of October 23rd, at some point, Councilmember Gregory will have the accommodations tax advisory committee meeting. And so that just brings me to community assistance grants, because we don't have that. We're not planning for that. I wasn't sure what everybody's thoughts were on having community assistance grants again and starting that in 2024. We've not funded those in the past 3 years. If we do that, then we would need to get the application and everything ready, because that would follow the same calendar deadlines as the accommodation tax grants.
It's been 3 years already?
Yeah, we didn't do them in 21, 22, or 23.
Wow, time flies when we're having fun, isn't it?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So do y'all have any thoughts about that? I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard, I'm a little surprised, but I didn't have a lot of community organizations that we normally supported reach out to me and fuss about it at all. But I'm just curious, have y'all heard from anyone? Y'all have any advice?
I've had 2 groups ask me if we're bringing them back, but nobody complaining or, anything like that. So.
Right.
I've had some inquiries as well, Mayor.
Yeah. Last time we did this, Amy, how much did we put aside for it?
I think in 2020 it was around $400,000, Mayor.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having to cut it in half, if you remember, because of the pandemic. But I think it had grown to about $400,000 over.
Yeah. I think we were able to be helpful to some groups with ARPA and a little extra dose of hospitality and accommodations where that could be justified. But there are some true community service organizations out there that, we do like to support. We
could just say, okay, this is the number, and that's it. So then the internal committee would know they only have this amount of money to deal with, and we just have to commit to that for 2024. It doesn't have to be, where everybody applies for it and then we kind of judge. We can just say, this is the pot of money that you have, and then you have to fit the best applicants into that amount.
Yeah. Any other?
Sense. It makes sense to me to back into it that way.
What's that again, council member?
It makes sense to me to back into it the way Amy described.
Yeah.
So that it's not a $400,000. We could say,
Right.
okay, we're only going to do $200,000 in 2024, and then if we decide in the next year to increase it a little bit, but we can limit the number as we ease back into it.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it too. We would so.
I think that makes sense, and maybe would we have time to decide for sure when you kind of see how we made out from our audit from last year?
We wouldn't be able to use those funds for grants, Mayor.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that, but I mean, it would just maybe give us comfort level about.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we'll close it out. We can make the decision to go ahead and do it and decide on the number later, and just at least get the grant app, the notice out to everybody that we are doing it. We can decide on the number later after we close out 2022.
Yeah. Well, unless I hear an objection, let's start with a modest, not set a dollar amount, but kind of let people know it'll be a modest amount, and just let people know we will consider applications for next year at this point.
Okay, we can do that.
Sound okay, everybody? All right.
Works for me, Mayor.
All right.
Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the ballpark renovations. We've talked about this for a while now. We have the one MOU for half of the design for the upgrades right now with the River Dogs. We really probably need to get going on the renovations, or we're going to be not in compliance with the MLB. So the River Dogs would like to create an MOU with the city for the construction of the upgrades. So as a reminder, the upgrades include more square footage in the clubhouses. They're trying to provide a more balanced experience for the players and coaches, separate clubhouses for female coaches and umpires. And then there's minimum standards for weight rooms and batting cages and dugout bench lengths and everything else that I have listed there. So that is basically what the MLB is requiring the River Dogs to do.
Let's get it done.
So the River Dogs had sent over an MOU that we're looking at it and tweaking it a little bit. They had an MOU with the city to equally share the cost of the project up to $4.2 million. And that cost stems from two separate estimates depending on involvement from the Citadel, because they could move the Citadel's clubhouse and do a renovation for that, and the Citadel can contribute in that. Otherwise, if they don't do that, then we'd just leave it the same and just renovate the way that it is, and the Citadel would not participate in the renovation, if that makes sense. But the two estimates, the first estimate is with participation from the Citadel, and the second estimate is without participation. Does that make sense?
It
Yep.
does.
Okay, so that's why they set up to 4.2. So this project management, I'm just swagging that. I'm not exactly sure, just thinking about the contracts we've had lately, because they would like to include a project manager as well in this agreement, so that we have somebody representing both interests of the city and the River Dogs to manage the project. So their proposal is that they would contribute $800,000 upon execution of the MOU. We owe the River Dogs $300,000 for the club level construction. If you remember, we had a 10-year agreement with them, $100,000 a year to contribute towards that club level, really nice area that we go to occasionally. So we have 3 years left on that, $300,000. So they would want to use that remaining amount that we owe them as a credit towards their $800,000 contribution. So really, they'd just be cutting a check for $500,000. The remaining of it, they would pay 5 equal annual installments beginning in 2024. So we would basically, the city would be upfronting pretty much the whole entire cost of the renovation, with them paying us back, which is kind of it's the reverse of what we did with the club level. Like, they fronted the cost and we paid them back over 10 years. They want to do that over a 5-year period. And then all of that would be in a joint escrow account that would be used to pay the construction pay apps and all of that. And at the end, if there was any remaining funds, it would return back to the city with a pro rata amount to the River Dogs based on what they contributed. So that was the proposal that they sent to us about a month ago. So,
Amy, a question on the project management. That was what, 200,000?
That's just me guesstimating that, though, Councilmember Craig. I'm not sure exactly if that number is right, but you just knowing what the cost of things are lately, that's the number that I kind of threw in there. I don't think that.
So they would just they would just coordinate with our capital projects.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Freeing them up to do some other things.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Amy, the River Dogs would put in 800,000 though when we signed the MOU, and basically give us credit for the remainder of what we owe on the club.
They'll do 500,000 with the 300,000 credit. So we would no longer have to pay them that $300,000. We would put that into the escrow account, basically, is what it is. But they would be putting $500,000 cash of their own cash in there.
Of their own cash. So they're putting some skin in the game. And would it help for me to call General Walters or us to communicate directly with the Citadel, or we think that's moving along?
I think that's moving along. The last time that I talked with Jeff, that it was moving along, and I think they just need to get approval. Like, we would need to get approval. So I think it's moving along okay.
Okay. So in all likelihood, we believe the scenario would be the 3.8 or the little bit lesser amount. Mm-hmm. But regardless, we're splitting it 50-50.
That's right.
I got you.
It's just we're going to upfront the costs and they're going to pay us back over time, but it's still 50-50.
Yeah. I don't know about y'all, but when we were there the other day, even a regular Sunday evening game, there were, 5,000 of our citizens out there, families enjoying themselves. I mean, I know this isn't a moneymaker for us, but it provides a lot of enjoyment and recreation for our citizens. And they got to meet these requirements in order to stay in the game, so to speak, no pun intended, or maybe so. But unless anybody has an objection, I think it's reasonable at this point for us to proceed with this, given that there might be a few tweaks to the MOU. Anybody have any thoughts, objections?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I agree. This is a huge amenity for the city. The wonderful partners that we have. And as soon as we get this thing done, I think there's going to be a sigh of relief from their perspective. I know they're antsy about getting this thing wrapped up. So
yeah.
I was trying to listen to all of the numbers being thrown out, but that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Yes, sir.
I'll send the PowerPoint slide to everybody after the meeting. And I just want to remind everybody too, we've already have $1.5 million budgeted in 2023 towards this project. So yeah. And looking at timing, Jeff and I were looking at the timing. I think that works okay, that we wouldn't have to amend or add additional funding based on the way the construction will work, but we're still kind of working on the timing of when the construction payments would happen to make sure that works okay.
Gotcha. Very good. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we talked about this before, maybe it was even 2 years ago, but what is the current cost of a general admission ticket to a River Dogs game?
That I do not know. Anybody know? Did we ever include, I hate to bring up a topic that, anyway, did we ever add the dollar fee for the tickets?
We haven't. We're continuing to talk to them about that.
That's where I was going with this.
Yeah, we were continuing to talk to them about that. I think they were a little reluctant with Tampa Bay. Is it Tampa Bay? Yeah, right. That's what they are now. All the additional fees that they've added to a ticket, and coming out of the pandemic, they were a little worried about adding additional fees to that. So we hadn't pressed them on that though, but they know that that's out there, and we're still would like to implement something like that. So Rick, I don't know if you've had any further conversations about that with them, have you?
No, and I'm trying to see if I can find out what the answer. It looks like they're $29, Mike.
Yeah. I was gonna
Yeah,
say, we were buying tickets for Kendall and I last year, and it was like $23 or something like that, but that was last year.
Yeah, I'm on the ticket page right now. Upper Reserve, Section 204, $29, row 2. So
That's the lowest price. Then it goes to up to 49 for a field view, and
Wow, I didn't know it was that expensive.
I don't know if right before game time, if they go down a little bit, I don't know, but anyway. More than you would think they were.
The other side, if it's that expensive, what's one more dollar?
That's kind of where I was going with this, one more dollar. I mean, they get a couple, 300,000 people out there a year, right? I mean, that's not an insignificant amount if we negotiate and talk with the River Dogs team to use that extra dollar back towards facilities maintenance and upgrades. It seems to me to be something we should at least be thinking about. This isn't new. It's not a new conversation.
Right.
No, and they know that this is what we want to do. So we'll continue to work on that.
I think we ought to add the dollar.
I do too.
I do too.
yeah, I agree.
All
I
right.
agree. I think we all agree.
Okay,
We'll
so
do the MOU, but let's go ahead and try to set a date where we're going to add the dollar.
yeah, it would probably have to be for the next season, Mayor, because I
Next
think
season.
the new season, because they probably got season tickets out there at a set price. So it would have to be for the 24 season.
So be it. Yeah.
And Lord knows, please don't add any money to the beer because God, it's expensive out there already.
You were
Okay,
supposed
so
to, you were supposed to get a free beer because I didn't throw you out of the game. They didn't do that.
Let me tell you, all I can tell you is it was very generous of the city to include some River Dogs bucks in our admission when we went, but the River Dogs bucks that were included did not buy a full beer. You still had to subsidize it out of your pocket. It's expensive.
All right.
By the way, Mr. Mayor, Dave was our guest speaker at Rotary yesterday, and they were the top 5 with attendance every year in Major League Baseball farm clubs. So the price increase is not going to hurt attendance because they are doing something right, bringing people to the ballpark.
Gotcha. All right, sounds good.
we'll finalize the MOU. We'll keep working with them to tighten that up a little bit, and we'll bring it to the second meeting in May.
Okay, sounds good.
So then city fees update, our current fees, we're pretty much, we're still working on them. Not much has changed since our last meeting on that. So I don't know if you have any questions on current fees. These are kind of the ones that we're looking at. And we're starting to work with the fire department too, and the fire marshal's office as well.
Amy, on the parking fees, is there any thought about some of the ones we've already talked about and seem to have some general unanimity on implementing them sooner rather than later, just to give us a little head start for budget year next year?
On T&T committee for this next meeting, Councilmember Seekes, we have the hotel overnight parking fees on there to increase those from $20 to $30. So those we'll go ahead and do that in this next meeting or this upcoming council meeting. Probably we have to give 30 days notice. So we set a July 1st implementation.
Great, thank you.
I would note, Amy, in a kind of similar fashion, that everything in that top row, the green, the tourism related fees, I would say as soon as we can practically do it, that we should bring it forward for approval and put those in place.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing, Mayor, is we get them, even if it's before, it just depends on where we are in the year, right? So whether it's better to just put them on into 2024 or whether we implement them in 2023, all of that's being considered. It just depends on the timing of when we get through all the exercises we need to get through.
Okay.
Okay. And then
Can I ask a really quick question, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
about that,
Yeah,
about
sure.
those fees, that top line budget items? Are those all monies that we can use as we see fit, as in their general fund monies, not limited use monies?
not the tourism ticket fees.
Those are limited use funds?
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks.
And then we talked about new fees last meeting, and Councilmember Gregory had mentioned the D transfer fee, which I think legal research and provided a memo to you after last meeting. So I think everybody knows the result of that. And then the tourism management fee, legal is still working on that as well. Any other questions, thoughts about those?
Can you refresh our recollection as to the tourism management fee, what that is?
Councilmember Appel, did you want to talk about it? That's Appel's fee.
That's the dollar per person, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about this. This might be better discussed in an executive session one day when we can talk about some of the legal issues with some of these matters. But the idea is to explore whether the city can impose a flat fee on room nights in the city of Charleston.
I remember that. Okay, thanks. Got it.
I know legal's been working on that. And so maybe our next meeting, which is on May 31st, we can include an executive session to talk about those items.
That's great. That's a great idea. I really am so thrilled to see this on the slide. This is awesome.
Good.
Okay.
And when would we do that, Amy? I couldn't hear you.
So the next meeting is May 31st, Mayor. So we'll put an executive session on that meeting and we'll talk more in depth on that once legal has a little bit more time to vet that and some other things that we've been talking about as well.
Sure. Okay. Very good.
And that's really all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Anybody got anything?
I'm halfway back to Charleston. Good meeting.
Awesome.
Thank you, Amy.
Sure.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Amy. We'll not hear any other business. We are hereby adjourned. Thank Amy and all your staff for their work on all this. And it looks like so far year to date, we're continuing to be in a good position. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.